In this video, I want to take a text string and I want to split that up based on transitioning from text to non-text and likewise from non-text to text. This video will be 3 episodes. In the first, I'll solve the problem by chaining splitters. In the second, I'll make my own splitter. And in the third, I'll use List.Generate. This is my starter text. And this is what I want to end up with, where I have a split because there's a transition from a text n to a number. Here we have number and a space, then text, then a space. Then we have space, the hashtag and our number, and a space, and so on. In the first query, we'll leverage existing splitter functions. In this case, there's one called Split.Character.Transition, which can either take a list of characters or a function that takes a character. In other words, you have an argument, like so. Then this function must output true or false. And the output of the splitter function is then a function itself, which we can then apply on our text. I'm going to start out by making a list which has all of my text characters, which I can do with x.y syntax. I'm not going to include the special Danish characters, but you can add that to this list. And that's why I'm making this a step on its own. We can then create the first splitter. The first splitter is going to split when we go from non-text to text, which means we then need to provide a function that takes a character and returns true and false, because we need to say if the character is not in this list. My before is then going to be b, goes towards not list contains, so I can't find it inside of my list of text, comma b. My after is going to be the list of text. And this is then a function, and before I apply it, I want to make the inverse function, which is then going to be called to non-text. And we simply change the order around, meaning from a text character to a non-text character. Then I want to change this to a because it's the after. And then we can chain them together. The function takes a text as an input. We can then apply this to the source step, which gives us a list where we already have this division from a text character to a non-text character. Then we have to transform this list because I want to make a split here between the space and the is, and also the space and the h here, meaning I can't simply call it again on this list, but I can use List.Transform to say I want to go into this second row and do a split here. What I can then do is call to non-text, where I then want to use List.Transform. I want to go into my call to text list and say for each row, I want to apply my func to non-text function upon the underscore, which is then the current item. And then we're going to get a list of lists, where here we don't have a split because we already did a split. And I can see here it would help if I called the correct function. We're going to call func to text in a step called call to text, and then we can see it changes a bit. Now there is a division between 73 and the space, where we have 73 space, and then we go into an I, and then the call to non-text does a split in the first row between the n and then the space. Likewise, we have is and a space, and this is what I wanted. But now I have a list of lists, where we have 2 items in each list. We then have to unpack that, and conveniently I can use my favorite function, List.TransformMany, and in this case we don't have to apply a transformation. Actually, let's look at the documentation. We want to flatten a list, but we don't have a list of records like they do in the documentation. I simply want to unpack the inner list, which means I want to apply this on the call to non-text list. And my transformation is then I don't want to do anything. I simply want to extract the value, and my result transform then takes the inner list and the outer list, which then goes towards the outer. Just for curiosity, I want to see what happens if I do inner instead, and I simply get duplications. So that's not what I want. I want the outer. I have a division every time I go from a text character to a non-text character, and from a non-text character to a text character. And if you wanted to, you could then go through this and do a list select to remove the spaces. And actually I also want to trim it, but let's start out by doing a select to remove the spaces. And because this is text, it doesn't like me putting a not in front of it, but I can do this. Here it gets mad because I can't apply the not operator to text, but if I wrap this in parentheses, this will execute first, which then evaluates to true or false, and then I can inverse it. Now I have that thing. Yeah, we still need to deal with spaces. If I have a space and then a non-text character, because that's valid, so I could then do List.Transform to say custom to and say trim. And because this is a function that takes one argument, assuming I want to remove spaces, I don't have to provide each or the underscore. Yeah, we could see it changed it here with the hashtag 1. But that was everything for solution 1. So, yep.